Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your sources, articles, research notes, and, well, we cut through the noise to get to the core insights.
That's right. Think of us as guides, helping you understand what's really important in the material you've shared with us.
Today, we're diving into a set of sources about a really fast economic policy change in Brazil. It's all about the IOF, the tax on financial operations.
And the material gives us a few angles here. We've got commentary from Ricardo Dias, clips from Brazil's finance minister, Fernando Haddad, and then some economic analysis from Daniel Sousa.
Yeah, so our mission, for this deep dive is to figure out what actually happened, look at the really different views in these sources about why it happened, and try to grasp the potential impact, all based strictly on these sources.
And the really interesting part, right from the start, according to this material, is this big tax increase gets announced, and then boom, it's reversed, like on the very same day.
Wow.
Which, the sources discuss with a lot of surprise and, frankly, criticism.
Okay, let's unpack that. The event itself. So across the sources, it seems the Minister of Finance, Fernando Haddad, and one commentary source even calls him Tax-Haddad.
Right, pointedly.
He announces this increase in the IOF tax.
And the scale mentioned in that commentary, it's pretty significant. From about 1% up to 3.5%.
That's a big jump.
Yeah, the source calls it a 250% increase. And the IOF, just so you know, it's Brazil's tax on financial operations. Often hits things like credit, foreign exchange, that sort of thing.
Okay, so a major proposed hike. But this is where it gets, really confusing, based on what we're reading here. Within hours, literally hours, the decision's reversed.
Just like that.
Just walked back, as one source puts it, announced and canceled before, the end of the business day?
Exactly. And that incredibly quick reversal is what these sources really zoom in on. But they offer very different reasons for why.
Okay, let's start with perspective one. This is the commentary from Ricardo Dias. And this source is really critical, uses some strong language, very sarcastic tone. That explains the Tax-Haddad thing.
Yeah, and the core argument, the key insight from this source, seems to be that the reversal, how fast it happened, and the external pressure they describe, it exposes what this source sees as incompetence.
Right. The source basically says the minister showed master-level incompetence, that he has no clue what he's doing. It's pretty harsh.
And this source gives a specific reason for the reversal that's completely different from what the minister says later.
Yeah.
It argues it wasn't some careful internal review. No, it was immediate, intense pressure from outside.
Yeah.
The source talks about phone calls, people screaming, calling the minister an idiot, insane.
Wow. So just getting hammered with criticism.
That's the picture this source paints.
Right.
Basically forced into retreating on the policy.
And the criticism isn't just about the reversal itself, right? It's about the policy, too. This source argues the IOF increase was definitely not minor or residual, like the minister claimed.
Exactly. This commentary says it would have had a big impact. Because IOF applies to things like currency exchange, right? Yeah. So the source gives examples. Imported wheat relies on foreign exchange. Tax goes up. Cost gets passed on. Bread prices could rise. That's the argument.
Makes sense.
And also things like electronics, international transactions generally. The cost ends up with the consumer, the source argues. And questions if the minister even, understood that.
You can really feel the exasperation in this source when it talks about the minister's justifications later.
Oh, yeah.
It just dismisses the idea of equalizing rates, says he just wanted the money, and pushes back hard on the idea it wouldn't affect individuals directly.
It's saying the cost absolutely would hit consumers through higher prices. There's a real tone of distrust there. The minister's official story isn't the real story.
Okay, so that's one perspective. Incompetence, external pressure forced the reversal. Policy itself was flawed. Very critical. Now, let's switch gears. Perspective two. The minister, Fernando Haddad himself, based on the clips provided.
Right, and here we need to be careful just to report what the clips say he said, his side of the story.
So the key insight from his perspective, as shown in these clips, seems to be framing it as a controlled process. New information came in after the announcement, leading to a refinement, not a panic move.
Exactly. According to the clips, Haddad says that after announcing it, he got a series of subsidies, basically input information from people in the markets.
Subsidies. Interesting word choice.
Yeah, the first commentary source we talked about really picked up on that and noted he almost seemed to slip and say liaison, which means phone call.
Ah, okay.
Right.
So maybe closer to the first source's claim than he intended?
Possibly. But his stated reason for the review was to avoid speculation and because the initial message wasn't the one desired by the Ministry of Finance.
Which the first commentary read as code for "we wanted more money."
Right. He also defends the original measure, even though it was pulled back, calling it a very residual item.
Residual compared to what?
Compared to a larger package of measures he mentions, supposedly worth around 50 billion reais.
Yep.
So just a small piece of a bigger plan is the implication.
Okay. And did he say who wouldn't be affected?
Yes, specifically. He claims in the clips that the IOF on credit for individuals, personal loans, payroll loans, overdrafts, credit cards, was completely excluded from this proposed hike.
So trying to reassure regular people?
Seems like it. He also talks about the rates being re-equalized or adjusted or maybe aimed at stopping tax evasion. And he even claimed, despite journalists asking about the 1% to 3.5% jump, that the rate continued the same.
Wait, how could it continue the same if it jumped from 1 to 3.5%?
Exactly. That caused confusion, and the other sources highlighted it. So his story is, new info came in, led to refinement, avoided speculation, it was minor anyway, and didn't hit consumer credit.
Okay, two very different stories so far. Now, perspective 3, the economic commentator Daniel Sousa, more formal analysis here.
Yeah, this source offers a more standard economic viewpoint. His analysis immediately flags the need for the ministry to give more explanations. He says, needing to explain things and reduce noise is never good for confidence.
Right, the noise factor.
And his main insight really centers on the damage to credibility. He says Haddad is trying to minimize the damage, but, quote, the damage has happened and will likely continue. Why? Because there's a lot of distrust regarding what the government might do.
So a lasting impact on trust.
That's his assessment. He explicitly says the credibility of the economic team comes out tarnished.
And he connects this to the bigger picture, doesn't he?
He does. He links it to the government's overall fiscal plan, saying it's very dependent on increased revenue. And when you have events like this reversal, combined with that need for more tax income, it fuels the distrust he's talking about.
Makes sense. And what about the actual IOF hike itself from his economic perspective?
He notes that the initial large rate announced gave the impression it would hit capital flows.
Which is bad.
He calls it gravissimo, very serious for Brazil. Why? Because Brazil, he says, depends a lot on external savings to oxygenate its economy. Foreign investment, basically.
So spooking investors.
That's the concern. He states clearly that even though it was reversed fast, the initial announcement would have had consequences.
Okay, so let's try and connect these dots for you, the listener. Based on these sources, we've got this sudden policy announcement.
Huge IOF hike.
Then reversed incredibly quickly. Same day.
Right. And then these sources give you completely different reasons why. Was it, overwhelming external pressure, showing incompetence, like source 1 says?
Or was it a more managed review based on new market input, as the minister claims?
And then there are different takes on the potential impact, even though it didn't actually happen, minor residual thing, or something that could have seriously hurt consumers and vital capital flows.
But despite all these differences in interpretation and tone,
Yeah.
there's a clear common thread running through all the source material we looked at. This whole episode, the announcement, the reversal, the handling, created a lot of noise.
Definitely noise.
And it damaged credibility and trust in the government's economic team, according to these accounts.
Right. So why does sifting through these different perspectives from these specific sources matter for you? Well, it shows you how economic decisions get perceived, how they get framed in real time by different players.
Yeah. You've got the sharp commentator, the politician managing the message, the economist looking at credibility and flows. It shows how fast things move and how one event can be interpreted so differently.
And it gives you a much fuller picture based only on this material, remember, than just reading a headline saying tax raised, then lowered. It really highlights, as the sources point out, the real-world consequences of policy uncertainty. These like potential price increases for consumers or nervousness from international investors. These things matter way beyond Brazil's borders.
So wrapping up this deep dive into your sources, we saw a super fast policy U-turn, reports of intense reaction, that swift reversal, and then conflicting stories in the source material about why it all happened.
And the bottom line, according to these sources, seems to be a hit to confidence in economic management.
Which leaves us with a final thought, drawing from the material. If, as one source says, the government really needs increased revenue.
And if, as others say, credibility has been damaged by this.
What does this rapid reversal tell us about the sheer difficulty of making economic policy work, and maybe more importantly, building trust in today's really complex, interconnected global economy?
Yeah. Something to definitely think about.